Welcome back to The Right Fit. This one is a little different today. Usually I have somebody sitting across from me or well, at least virtually. And today it's just going to be me. So if you don't want to hear me, feel free to disconnect. No, I'm kidding. Hopefully you can hang out. But we hit 24 completed conversations episodes. And before we jump into episode 25, I wanted to stop for a second. Like I said, no guests, just me. And I wanted to talk about some of the things I've picked up from the people I've sat with, some of the things I've learned in my own journey, and honestly, what the right fit even means to me at this point. Because when I started the show, I had an idea in my head of what it would be. And obviously, after 20 plus conversations, that idea has shifted a bit naturally. So if you want to think of this as a bonus episode or conversation before we get into episode 25, I would love to have a little chat with you. And so let's start with why I even started The Right Fit, right? So why I even started this thing, I've always been drawn to the people behind the events, not just like the events themselves, let's say, because a lot of times when we think of events, we think of finished products. As a DJ, the packed dance floor, the beautiful photos, the decor, extravagant centerpieces maybe. But a lot of times these are final result things, right? But there's a whole group of people behind every single one of these moments, and every one of them has a story, and nobody really asks about their story and how they got there. Why this industry out of all industries? Was this the original plan or did it just happen? Like, what was the hard part of it all? Like, I love the hard lesson moments and what keeps you even doing this thing, right? Because what fuels you? What keeps you going? Those are the questions that, I care about. And, I just didn't want it to be just tell me about your company and what service do you offer? Like, you can find that out anywhere, a website, an Instagram bio at this point. So I wanted to really connect with the person behind the business because in this industry, we work next to people constantly and a whole lot of time we barely know them. I know one of the people that I interviewed and that we connected on different occasions, when I finally had her on the show or right before, it was almost kind of like, oh my God, like you live like 10, 15 minutes away from me, like you're pretty much my neighbor. And so like, once again, like all these little things that you're just like, well, yeah, we really don't know them, right? You know their Instagram, you know their company name, and it's very surface, right? And that's the piece that I wanted to dig into. I wanted to go a little deeper and get to know that part. And honestly, like that's part of like where this came from. It obviously has evolved, like I mentioned. And I understand that like there's so many talented people in this industry, but I've also realized that talent doesn't automatically make you the right fit for every person, every client, even every team, right? Some of these people might be part of a team. Something else has to line up too, whether it's personality, style, how you communicate. I felt like that was something worth talking about. And, I know another thing when I started this show that has shifted. I thought that it was going to be almost client focused too, in the sense of how can we provide value to clients? And I'm not saying that this cannot be of value to clients because I feel like a potential client can learn so much more about their vendor and maybe connect with them in a different level. And I'm not saying that obviously sometimes conversations might not lead to a valuable piece of insight or tip or trick, but I kind of thought that that's what it was going to be a lot more of. And it ended up just being more about this journey, right? That these individuals are going through. And 24 conversations has taught me a few things. And one thing has become super duper obvious, that there's no like single way to do this. Like the whole, like, what's the blueprint? What's the one career path? Like the one business model? Like there's no one version of success pretty much. I've sat across from people with like completely different stories, completely different personalities, completely different goals. Some of them knew exactly what they wanted to do from day one, or I guess you could say some of it even felt like their journey was a little more like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Like you used to work, managing a venue and now you became a wedding planner or whatever it is. And then some of it is like total left field. Hey, I was in IT and now I'm doing something in the event industry, whatever the case may be. So you could say some people stumbled into the industry versus like the traditional route. But somehow I guess a constant is, people figure out what works for them. I think that matters because it's so easy in this business to start second guessing yourself. I'm guilty of it, especially now when you're seeing what everybody else is basically doing all day, every day with social media. People hiring a team or somebody opening up a new studio, flying out for fancy destination weddings, or even just somebody posting like content consistently every day, like it's your full-time job. And you start thinking like, should I be doing that? Am I behind? What is my business supposed to look like? Am I doing the right thing? And like these conversations keep hammering something home. It's like what works great for someone else is not all, what's not going to work for everybody. It's like not a one size fits all, I guess is what I call it. And it goes the other way, it's like a vice versa thing. It's not a universal way of doing things. And sometimes the thing that looks small from the outside. So for example, like you're looking at something that you feel like, well, this isn't small, but it doesn't matter because maybe that's what that person exactly wants. They want to keep it something maybe more intimate or boutique or smaller operation, let's call it. And sometimes there's a person who looks the busiest, right? You see them, but like behind the scenes, low key, like they're trying to figure out how to work less. But like we might not know that. We might think like, oh my God, they're so busy and this is what they're trying to do, but you really can't tell from the outside, right? So these conversations have brought some of these things to light. And at some point you have to stop, I guess, asking what everybody else is doing and start asking it like what actually makes sense for you. And I'm starting, like, obviously I've worked at through my, personally, but I also see a lot of other people working through it. And I don't think it's a question that ever really fully goes away sometimes, right? Because at the same time, like people want to continue to grow or do things or switch things up. But also it's made me think about what actually matters in this industry, right? Here, here's another thing that keeps coming up in these conversations. Obviously talent is going to matter. Hopefully you're good at what you do, or it's going to be hard to find people to kind of book you or, I guess stay around, right? But the more I think about it, right, it's not just the talent piece, like I guess what I'm trying to get at, because this event industry is never really just like working alone. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of personalities in the room. There's a lot of pressure, obviously, with things that can be changed, like changing last minute. So like, sure, you could do your job, but can people actually depend on you? Can you communicate under pressure? What happens when things falls apart, or like things fall apart, things go sideways? I mean, literally recently, this past weekend, I had a bajillion different curveballs, like you name it. I can make a whole other podcast about it. But how do you do when you're working with other people in the room? Can you also put the client ahead of your ego, right? That's something that I've seen as I've matured in this industry as well, where I wouldn't just say the newbies, could be the vets in the game too, where it's like they can't get out of their own way and, they may be making it about themselves and not the client. So that stuff matters a lot more, like, I guess, than people give give credit for. So, if you're able to get to that point, I think it's a good sign, right? That conversation that I've had maybe with the planner that's able to quietly fix something, or that situation maybe where a venue adjusted something on the fly, the photographer carved out a few extra minutes to get something done, but kind of help the couple get back on track. The people who are catching the problems before they even turned into something real, let's say not real, it's a real problem, but something even bigger. And I think the biggest part is also the couple that never even notice these things. They just remember how the night went smooth. To me, like, that's what professionalism actually looks like. It's not always the flashy part of the job. Once again, things that we don't see, like we can't really take pictures and videos of. And a lot of the time, it's just making everything feel and look effortless. And the people who tend to stick around in this industry are the people who are doing that, right? Because at the end of the day, people also remember how it felt working with you, not just what you produced. So, those have been some interesting qualities that I guess I'm seeing as a pattern, because it's also kind of rolled into like how that definition of success has changed for me. This is something I think about a lot more than I used to, especially after having kids and having a wife. And, to be honest, early on, I think for some of the people that I've spoken to, or maybe I could just speak for myself here in this moment, is, it was more bookings, more events, more money, more recognition, just being busier. And look, like, there's nothing wrong with wanting any of that, like if that's what your goal is. But when you're building something, you want obviously growth and momentum, and you want proof that it's actually working, right? But I don't think about success quite the same way anymore. There was a stretch where like being busy felt like the whole goal, right? Like I'm saying, like the full calendar thing, and right, something must be going right. But I mean, it even got to the extreme where it was almost kind of like if I was not doing something on a weekend, if I didn't have an event, it was almost kind of like, am I a loser? Because like I don't have something to post about right now. Like maybe not like a loser, but you know what I mean? Like, was this guy not busy? Like it felt like that's what I needed to be busy doing an event or something like that. And I found myself once again, with this growth, asking different questions. Like, do I actually want to work with this event? Or am I just saying yes? Is this the kind of event I want more of? Does this move me toward where I'm trying to go? Am I working with the people I genuinely like to work with? This is a big one, right? Especially in the right fit, where I've been connecting with so many different vendors from all different walks. It's a reminder of like working with people I genuinely want to work with, right? Because once we're at this event, like that could also make the day a lot smoother. So that's been a big one too. And once again, going back to the whole like being busy versus not thing. I mean, once again, trying to find your own balance, right? It's not a one size fits all. Your busy might be different from my busy, but do I still have time for the people like who matter to me the most outside of work, right? Or your business or whatever you want to call it? Am I building something sustainable or am I just running fast? This has been such a big one when I'm talking to people and I'm talking to them at different stages and maybe hearing about different struggles in the moment. And I think sustainability is so important. It's once again something that wasn't not necessarily at the forefront before, but like, how do you keep this thing alive? How do you keep this thing manageable? How do you avoid waking up one day and saying like, I hate this, but it's not maybe because you hate it. It's just maybe because you're just burnt out. And that's obviously a term that we hear a lot more about these days. So those are questions that I'm reflecting on once again, that matter a lot more to me now, because you can completely be like busy or slammed with work or whatever and still not be moving towards anything you actually want, right? Like you could be doing all these things, but maybe not really getting to this ideal scenario or ideal goal. So I guess where I'm getting at with this is also like, you can say yes to everything and wake up, like I said before, like realizing you built a business that you don't even like anymore. So I think that's important, when I'm having these conversations and we're trying to navigate this journey, let's call it, is once again, making this thing sustainable, like I said before. And part of growing up in this business is realizing that once again, like every opportunity is not your opportunity, right? That one also took me a while to believe. And I think I've had a lot of conversations with people as well who can resonate with that, especially in the early years. But it's also, I guess you could say, good when I understand I'm not alone now, when sometimes saying no matters more just as much as saying yes, right? It's like sometimes the win isn't like landing the booking. Sometimes the win is realizing it was never the right booking to begin with. So that's been a big one. And talking to other people who can relate to that, I think has been great, which honestly brings me back to the whole idea behind this show, like what the right fit means to me now. Like after 20 plus conversations, 24 to be exact at this point, and my own years of just being in the industry, like what does the right fit actually mean to me at this point? And I think one of the biggest things I've taken for it is being the right fit doesn't mean being the right fit for everybody. It's a hard thing to accept for some people, sometimes for people when you're building a business, like I said, especially when you're earlier in the game, but you want people to pick you for the right reasons and vice versa, and not be in this, like, I guess you could say rabbit hole of like, should I have priced it different? Should I have sold it better? I mean, yes, to a certain extent, some of these things matter, but I think it's also about finding your tribe. And over time, questions start to shift. And instead of like, how do I get them to hire me? It's become, are we actually the right fit for each other, right? And do they connect with how I work? Do I actually understand what they're looking for? Do our expectations line up? Is there trust here? And that's not just about clients. It's about the people you collaborate to, the people you hire, the people you partner with, even the direction you take like this business in, right? Sometimes something looks perfect on paper, it's still not the right fit, right? Sometimes you might meet somebody or land an opportunity you weren't expecting much from, and all of a sudden things can maybe click, right? That's the alignment piece that I understand differently now. The goal was never to be, once again, everything to everybody. It's understanding what like you actually do well, who you do it well for, and finding the people who value it. Oh man, that's been such a big one too. Like the people who value it. Once you find somebody who values you, what you do, it's like night and day. Like, I mean, I've had situations where if I use myself an example where people value my work, it's like a different type of rewarding system. And it's not like this like need for like crazy praise. It's just more of just that alignment piece. And I've learned so many things from this show, what hosting this show has taught me. And one thing I guess I didn't fully expect going into this is how much I'd personally get out of these conversations. Like I knew maybe, here and there I learned some things, but like it changed the way I listen. It's changed the way that I ask questions, or at least I like to think it has changed the way I've gotten some feedback from some guests. And also just like those raw, candid reactions, whether it's maybe an emotional moment or something that like just wasn't expected. So like, for example, some of the most interesting parts of somebody's stories is not necessarily maybe a big accomplishment. It's sometimes like everything that happened right before it, right? Like this whole journey piece, right? The risk, the bad call, the mistakes, the moment, like they almost walked away like, hey, I was about to give up, or like I almost quit. The thing that forced them to change, right? Like it just rocked them in a way. I was like, all right, I got to switch things up. Those are the parts that actually stick with me. And I'm hoping that it's not just something that would stick with me, but a potential listener, a fellow industry professional, entrepreneur, or like it could be a client, who is maybe researching this person that I'm interviewing. So, and sometimes the guest says something completely off topic too, from maybe what I asked them, right? Because this is something that I've wanted to stay true or keep in this show, is that I don't send any questions ahead of time. Nothing is scripted. Everything is very organic. I always tell everybody when I get somebody on the show, it's very conversational. Sometimes my questions are rooted or derived from an answer that the person gave me, and then it creates another question that I might ask. I try to have some structure and flow to things. Obviously, it's not like just me winging it either. But at the same time, I think having those organic pieces are so important, because those are the type of things that might stick weeks later, right? And I'm hoping it does the same thing for our listeners. And that's generally one of my favorite parts of doing this, because even though the show like lives inside, I guess you would say, somewhat of like the event industry bubble a bit, a lot of these conversations end up being about, so many things, right? The relationships, confidence, just like life, right? That kind of all ties in. Like, for example, when I've had conversations with other guests who also have kids and how they manage their lives and what they do, like, it can be personal and still business at the same time. And that's why, I really want to keep doing these and having these amazing conversations. And I'm excited for what the show is going to be, and maybe into the next 25 episodes. At the same time, I thought I was starting somewhere and I had an idea, and obviously that has evolved a bit, and I'm sure it's going to continue to evolve a little bit more. But I'm also looking to do some different things, in the sense of maybe switching some things up with the social media, potentially, maybe some different style interviews, in the sense of I've been trying to keep it virtual as much as possible, because it makes it hopefully easy as possible for guests, versus somebody taking up a half a day to meet me at a studio. We can jump in a virtual studio a lot easier from the comfort of wherever they might be from their home working with. And honestly, I don't know if I've shared this on an episode or not, but I have shared it with some guests, is like the concept behind this whole show came like probably 2+ years ago, but it never took off, because I was always looking for this perfect space, like this perfect studio, this perfect setup, this perfect aesthetic. And I did nothing with it, right? Because that always like stopped me. It always like, okay, I gotta wait. And then I just ripped the Band-Aid, so to speak. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it virtually, and we're going to start from there and just see where it goes. And here we are, like I said, almost in episode 25. It's been such a great journey so far. So many great connections. And although I don't know exactly what to expect out of the next batch of conversations, I'm confident that they're still going to be amazing and great. And that's kind of the fun part of it all too, which is, like I said, interviewing so many different people, different areas. I've talked to the cigar rollers, I've talked to the DJ, I've talked to the photographer, I've talked to the musician, the catering. And I have so much more that I still haven't even crossed off my list that I have. And it's exciting, right? Because some of it is still the unknown. But in a nutshell, I want to keep talking to interesting people. I want to keep getting these different perspectives, different roles, and different stages of their careers too, right? Yeah, the person 4 years in the game, the person 20 years in the game. I want to get it all. Massive companies to single operation, But like I mentioned before, and like kind of not sending the questions and stuff like that, what I still want to maintain is keeping these conversations honest, right? I don't want every story to sound perfect because nobody's story actually is, right? That's the beauty of it. So if there's somebody you think that I can sit down with, please feel free to reach out, let us know, send us a DM, send us an email. Maybe it's somebody that it's maybe well known in the event and in the events industry. Maybe it's somebody that nobody's heard of yet, right? Maybe the person that nobody's heard of can be one of the best conversations that we might have. And that's the beauty of this all. But again, this wasn't episode 25. It was just a bonus conversation before we get there, reflecting after these 24 interviews. And like I said, trying to be present in the moment and take a step back to see where we've come. Just felt like the right moment to kind of sit back and think about it, what the show has given me and us, and also a moment to express my gratitude more than anything to anybody who is listening, and say thank you to any of the guests who have put their trust in me to sit across from me and share a piece of their story, be vulnerable, and maybe share things that people really haven't heard about. I mean, it's been an honor. So for anybody's watched, listened, shared an episode, left a comment, reached out, thank you, thank you, thank you. It means more to me than you probably know. This is a grind, long form content, short form content, posting, staying active, interacting, scheduling these things, making time to actually film them. So thank you. It's really appreciated. And, we're obviously still figuring things out to always try to improve and make things better, but obviously always keep the right fit in the forefront, right? What makes these people the right fit and what their journey has been and how beautiful it can be. And I think that's kind of the point, right? This journey, right? Like I keep mentioning, it's what keeps us going. And it's even helped me reflect, like even before starting the show, I've like read books and you hear stories, and sometimes you hear about these successful people who have dreamed of accomplishing this thing, right? My first $1 million or a gold medal or all these things, right? And then they get to this point and it's not what they expected it to be. And even if they go on this high, it's a very short, couple of weeks, and then it's in the back seat. So really what the bulk of it is the journey, right? And so like I said, that's an important piece of the right fit. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the show in whatever capacity. Like I said, even if you haven't seen a full episode and it's just a short clip, or if this is your first episode ever, thank you. Looking forward to seeing you on episode 25, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.